Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name is John. I'm your host. Tonight I'll be speaking with part two, actually, Shaun Leather about his near-death experience. And I wanted to take a brief moment to dedicate this episode to a very dear, close friend of mine and to her family, Ethel Bruno. Blessings. You've given so many details, I can't imagine what you've missed, but I mean, there's so much. You remember a lot. It's amazing, but so much happened to you. It's crazy, eh? My God. It's insane.
And honestly, you wouldn't believe how much stuff I've left out.
Well, my first question was going to be, who was your support system during this second NDE that you experienced in the hospital? Who was there with you?
I was mostly alone, and I've been mostly alone. And it's not a coincidence now. Like, my best friend and biggest supporter is my mother from the other side. And I have this whole playlist. So we started out with that one, and I have this whole playlist. And then, for a while I didn't get music, songs from her. But it's like that Daniel Goki to, tell your heart to beat again. All of a sudden, there's the heartbeat monitors, all that stuff. All of a sudden that goes away. I don't hear the doctors. I don't hear the nurses. I just hear that song. Literally. And hospital music is pretty quiet, but I heard every word of it. And that would happen throughout. So that the ICU several times, and some people have said, well, don't you think they probably just play that in the ICU, to help people? And it's like, okay, well, maybe let's say they did, which I know they don't, but let's just say they did. What about in the regular room? What about in the ambulance from the hospital to the rehab center? And then from the rehab center to my house. And then that following Monday, the song's playing. Literally, I come down the elevator, go to the lobby. The car door is open in the medical transport. And what do I hear?
That's so interesting. And let's talk about the pre-birth memories just for a second. I find that extraordinary because I have some as well, and I think we've talked about this pre-show and stuff. When you had these pre-birth, once these things started to happen to you, did you make any sort of connection, whether just a memory or was there any kind of connection whatsoever between the pre-birth memories and the actual things that you were going through?
I lived a lot of my life in denial, not believing that this stuff was real. Mm-hmm. And so I denied a lot of the stuff, but I saw a lot of things that was going to happen because I literally knew what I was from the minute I was born, essentially, that this was not, I was going to have highs, it wasn't going to be like this whole thing of misery. And I was going to have a great highs and a lot of wonderful things, and get to experience all these amazing things. But I was also going to be separated from all of those things, everything that kept me attached to this physical world had to go so that I could wake up from the dream.
Where was the voice during the manifestation of all the money and wealth? Did that voice get pushed aside? Is that what happened? Or
yeah, I drowned it out. So it's always been there. It's always been. It's just,
but the snuff and all the other stuff and the wealth and everything just sort of drowned it out.
Oh yeah. And I know now. So after this last NDE, when I'm finally eyes wide open, I was afraid for a year or so that I was going to go back to sleep again because I'd done it. And like I was telling you, I had awakenings when I was young, or when I was still living in Utah. But when I heard that voice when I was 18 in Santa Barbara, to have an awakening then and have this voice telling me, what it was telling. And then I still kind of went back in the dream. My God was money. And what I didn't realize then that I know now is it was all validation. It was to seek external validation. But also I do like experiencing life. So I feel like I've crammed several lives into one. And I wanted to experience all that. I'm not one that's going to learn from a book. So I had to burn my hand on the stove a lot.
The clairvoyance that you started experiencing, and did this start before? I mean, do you think this is a direct cause or direct after effect, I should say, of the first NDE that you had?
I think both,
Mm-hmm.
because my mom had all this stuff. She had an NDE. Her mother was French Basque, which is now what they call gypsies. And so I think it was there. And I think that, and my mother knew it was there because her and I did stuff that she didn't do with other people in the family at a very early age. So she was a master astrologer and she did everyone's charts. And so when I was somewhere around 6 to 8, I'm sure she'd already done my chart, but this is when she first told me about it. And she said certain things like that I shouldn't eat wheat, processed wheat. And she's 100% right. That was confirmed later by doctors and stuff. Not that I don't eat it sometimes, but I'm not supposed to. And she also said that at 50, I was going to die or something life-changing. And she didn't want me to be afraid. I mean, she really described it to me that, yes, this could happen, but it's not necessarily going to happen. But this is in your chart. And on my 50th birthday, I was in the ICU on life support. And so she had these gifts. And she's the one that then took me to learn first what they called alpha awareness. And then from that, remote viewing. And then from that, astral projection. And she taught me, now remember, this is a Mormon housewife. And in fact, they'd written her letters, stop doing astrology or we're going to excommunicate you. But she did everybody's astrology. And my sisters, if they dated anybody, she had to do the charts. And you know, so, but she's always, she also had this relationship with the dark side, which she warned us about, all of us, not just warned us, but scared us. And now I know why. Now I understand why. I didn't back then, but she didn't like scare me to not be interested. She just instilled a good, fear of some of it. So, which was wonderful and helpful. But from an early age, I would know things and I would see things. And then the problem with in my house is, and I know that they were doing it, they weren't doing it on purpose, but there was a lot of gaslighting. I don't even think they were aware of what they were doing. So I would see stuff and it would experience stuff that was going to happen. But it would be discounted, extremely discounted to the point where they didn't listen. And then whatever happened would happen. And one time I saw a barn that was going to burn down and my dad didn't listen. And that barn, I think it cost him like $200,000 or $300,000 because there was no insurance. And every once in a while he'd say, I should have listened, but he never did. Never. So yeah, I've had this knowing, but I just didn't, I believe it. I mean, I'm just now, it took NDEs and all this stuff for me to start really listening and acknowledging that I do have these gifts.
It always amazes me, especially when I hear these incredible stories or experiences like yours, that um, we just we all get so much support, whether we're even, aware of it or not from, and you mentioned this before, from the spirit world. And it's, I don't know, it just makes me smile, I mean, I know it's important to stay focused and, being on earth and living in the present and enjoying our experience while we're here instead of focusing on all this other stuff. I mean, you and I do this because this is what we do. We're not suggesting that everybody be obsessed with this kind of thing, but it's still, I don't know, it's just really nice to know that we've got that kind of support, and it's an abundance and for everyone, you know, whether they
Yeah.
realize it or not. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to come into contact, like direct awareness with it, that's amazing. And maybe at some point everyone will, but maybe not, it depends. But it just amazes me. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody has. And
Oh, I think so
from
too.
the other side, whether they want to admit it or not, they do.
Mm.
And,
And all the
because I
get ready and, that get ready, it's extraordinary. And like, I'm sure you must have felt some sort of connection once all this stuff really, steamrolled ahead to that getting ready message that came to you earlier.
well, yeah. And here's the thing. When the voice said it, I knew what it was saying. I knew what it was telling me to do. I literally, what get ready meant to strengthen my spirituality. And I knew what it was telling me, but for whatever reason, I didn't want to listen. I was listening enough that I remember it, but what I realize now is I had more suffering to do. I think
Right.
that we come into this world and we get we get this suffering for whatever reason. And I now realize it's to help us grow. But some of us, we get addicted to the suffering and we don't want to let it go. And so I kind of feel like I had more suffering to do, which I did. And honestly, after my NDE, I realized I don't want to suffer anymore. And I think that's also when the voice said before the NDE, when it said, stop hurting yourself. In that moment, it was divine timing, because I was done hurting. So I wasn't done paying the consequences for hurting myself, but I was done hurting myself.
Right.
And so that's. But what you're saying about, having this help from the other side, honestly, it's magical. Life can be magical. And to know that we have all this support, I realized that my life, my experiences, that there was a reason for what I experienced, and that I'm supposed to help others that have gone through or are going through things that I will. So as I sat there and I was waiting for the handyman, and I think I have a picture of this. I have my walker, and I was sitting there, and I said this prayer from the Course in Miracles, and it says, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. And that's when I knew for sure that I was here. The rest of my life was going to be a life of service. So I went to this support group with my walker, and the ego part of me is saying, what are you doing here? You don't belong. I go in and I sit down, and this one guy says to me, because I had like a backpack or something attached to my walker, and he says, are you houseless too? Of course, my ego's like, no. But, in that moment, I realized that I was amongst angels. I was still There was still this ego, like I'm separate from them. I don't belong. And my mother said, you are them. That's one of the most amazing things of having help from the other side. If we just listen, because that was so profound when she said that. My ego is trying to be separate. And she's like, no, you are them. So from then on, I met and became friends with literally God's disciples in battered bodies that have overcome amazing things, that have illnesses where there's no cure. And these people, I learned so much from. And I am grateful because I now see what other people don't. So one of these experiences that I had was in one of these support groups. There was like 20 people there. This African-American guy comes in and never seen him before. But there was this instant connection. So he starts talking, and he's talking to everybody in the group, but telepathically,
is this the Black Jesus story?
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right, go.
He was in Canada playing. The way that this guy made his money is poker tournaments, and whatever happens, I don't remember, but he wasn't necessarily supposed to be there that day. And although he was really, but so there was this connection immediately, but I couldn't understand. So he sits down at the table. Most people would think of this guy as a homeless type or houseless, because a lot of people in my group are going to appear that way to other people. And in many cases, they'd lost everything. And all of a sudden, so he's talking to everybody in the group with his mouth, but all of a sudden, he's communicating with me with his mind. And at first, I'm like, is he really doing that? Like, and literally, as I'm saying, is he really doing that? He's going like this to me. He's looking right in my face and nodding. Yes, I'm really doing this. So throughout this meeting, he was doing that. And I was still processing everything that had happened to me. I wasn't even, I didn't really know much about NDEs or anything. All I knew is that everything about me was different, and it was never going to be the same. But I did have this deep, deep down knowing that I was supposed to do some things, and that there was this purpose. But that insignificant, wounded part of me still, who has been around narcissists my whole life, no way am I here to do anything great. No way am I here to do what I was having this feeling that I was supposed to do. Well, this guy started saying stuff like that, even in the group. He started to say, this one should be leading the group. He's going to be leading large groups. And I was just like shrinking down. Is he really saying this? What is he saying? And so after that meeting was over, he hadn't been on Honolulu there very long, and he needed to go get a blood test. And so I walked with him to show him where the place was. And as we start walking, the stuff this guy was telling me, only God and I know. And yeah, we go into the blood place where they draw the blood, and all of a sudden he's in his lower self. He's like, nobody would even know who this, that I'm pretty much talking to the Son of God or an ascended master that is now in a human body. He did the blood test. He was all in his human self as he's doing the blood test. We leave, and all of a sudden this guy is telling me what only me and God knows. So we went and sat on this bench. He started telling me more stuff. he even knew about people that I need to forgive that I still hadn't forgiven after my NDE. And so I pinched him at some point to make sure this is real. And I'm like, how can you be doing this? How can you be knowing this? And one of the first things he said was, you've been praying really hard. He's like, I just want you to know that your prayers are being heard. I'm here to let you know that. And so he started telling me more stuff about my future. And the more that he told me this stuff, the more that unhealed part of me still that like doesn't want to believe what he's saying, even though deep down I knew that he was telling the truth. So he said, you're going to be telling your story. And back then I'm like, no, I'm not. Like I was introvert, before my NDE. So when he said that like, you're going to be speaking and telling your story and leading these groups, it just blew my mind. And he actually told me to do some things, and it was very interesting. So one of the people that I was supposed to forgive, he knew before I said anything. I knew right then and there, this is above an angel. What's above an angel and below God? To me, Jesus. And the more he was telling me what I needed to do, the more I realized that I had all this resistance. And the more resistance I had, the more that I knew who he was. Because he was telling me truth. And he was literally telling me, it was for my salvation to forgive. And he was telling me how to do it. And he said, you mark my words. He said, you're going to have all this resistance and all things are going to happen that's going to stop you from doing what I am telling you to do. He was so right. I had all kinds of resistance, and then I got sick, and I didn't do it. One of these days I'll talk more about the stuff that he said, but I was talking to the Son of God, yet nobody would have known. And we were walking all through downtown, and we went to a Walmart, and I was blown away because, so he was staying at the YMCA. He wanted to get a pair of shoes. Anybody who saw this guy is going to think he's just, any other person. I wonder, was I like one of the people that we see talking to themselves? What's that mean? But I pinched him. And that's why I pinched him, because I had to know to make sure that you're real. I only got to see him one other time to confirm more of what he had told me, and I never saw him again. He changed everything for me.
So, Shaun, do you have any last, core message that you would want to give to our viewers about death and perhaps not fearing it? I know you've touched on it, but do you want to give one last message, kind of a Leather message?
The big message that I do want to say, it's not so much necessarily not death, but you're not who you think you are. And for everybody who thinks that you're not good enough and you're not lovable, you're not worthy, that's a lie. That is one of the most amazing blessings that I was able to have, to see that everything I thought about myself in the world was not true. And so that's my big message that I want people to know, that that's not true, that you're immensely loved, you are worthy. And any voice that in your head that tells you you're not is not spirit. It's not God. It's just ego and it's false beliefs. So that's one of my biggest messages.
That's a fantastic message. That is a fantastic message. I love it. Thank you so much, Shaun, I can't believe we finally did this, and I'm so happy that you decided to come on. And your generosity is just, I'm just really, 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 really grateful. Thank you so much for doing this from the bottom of my heart, brother.
Thank you. I really loved it too.
Awesome.